there was a lot of different like L's I took, different losses I took, that really put me in the position to, reevaluate where I'm at, try to see how I could be more effective. How can I optimize this better? How can this mistake not happen again? There was a time when I literally had this homeowner that I picked up two of his houses, and I I started realizing this is going well. I'm going to invest a lot into these homes. It was two homes. I invested like 30 grand in just in furniture into both of these homes. And I signed it basically on a handshake with this guy, each of them a year lease.
Today on the Lux and the Short of It podcast, we have one of my favorite humans, Sebastian Perez, otherwise known as Seb. He is one of the coaches in our mentorship program and just has so much wisdom and has grown his portfolio to over 30 arbitrage and co-hosting properties and has had some high highs and some low lows and is bringing all of that knowledge about mindset, growing a business and scaling. And it's just a really good conversation, guys. So let's get to it. Tell us where you are today. You're a world traveler. So where are you today?
Right now I am in West Palm Beach, Florida. I am now just recently basing myself out of Medellin, Colombia. It is just a prime, paradise for expats and people that work remotely. So I am very much so enjoying just living out there, soaking that up. But I'm actually in town in West Palm Beach in my studio because I am here this week setting up 7 active Airbnbs and 4 that are just in the works of, building the pool, still kind of in the last leg of construction. So that's
Get
exciting.
after it.
Yeah, getting after it.
So Colombia is kind of a full circle moment for you, isn't it? Because part of your foray into short-term rentals came from losing it all down there, right?
Yes. So
tell us about that.
Sure. So it's been a kind of a full circle journey, I guess. So I on my last year of college, I was, even before getting into college, I think all of us, deep down entrepreneurs are always thinking, we've been thinking it since we were young. We've maybe been picking up the self-development books, this and that. And I got into college. I did it because I wanted the degree, but deep down, I wanted to start my own business. And it took me 3 years of me being into college to being like, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and pull the trigger on the last year, and start my business while I'm finishing kind of college. So I actually visited Colombia, fell in love with it in Cali, Colombia. And I decided, I met a guy out there, and he was a person that was helping these large these large companies. This is gonna sound interesting, but it helps essentially export cannabis legally because they just had recently legalized it, to be able to basically create the raw material within Colombia and then you're allowed to export it out of the country, not for domestic use, basically. And Canada.
Where are we exporting it? At this point, was it legal in the US?
Exactly. So Canada was recently legalizing.
Okay.
Canada had just recently legalized. So all of the projections and the numbers and everything was there to be able to ride this incredible wave, of it. Just everything seemed very opportune, where Colombia has low cost of labor, 12 hours plus sunlight, etc. And I found the exact guy that is being treated like a lackey by these large American companies that are already doing it and doing it really well. And he had all the knowledge. and they were kind of leveraging him, and he had all the connections and this and that. So I met with him and I said, why don't we do it together? And I'll get the funding. I'll get the funding. I have, through my father's connections, powerful, investors and this and that. So we put everything together, the land, the laboratory, the this, the that, the potential employees. We were
The
already starting
quality control.
quality control. We were already
You're
starting.
I'm
Yeah,
just messing with you.
we were already starting to get like contracts and selling before we even had product, etc. To Canada, all of this kind of stuff. And it just you need four total licenses in Colombia to be able to
Mhm.
make that come off the ground. But uh, there's a lot of people doing it illegally, as well as even the people doing it legally were paying the government to kind of stall out the process on in how many get approved, how many licenses get approved. So they just stalled us out, and we were never able to kind of get the fourth license, even though we got three and we paid a lot for it. And eventually, I ran out of a visitor's visa, a student visa, a business visa because the business wasn't legitimate. Essentially, got the notice of like, you're basically like to deport me
Oh
back.
my goodness.
You need to get out. So I had to get out, and I'm trying to manage this from afar. And then we're just racking up, debt from employees, this, etc., like all sorts of stuff. And I'm then just find myself, living on my brother's couch, over 100K in debt, and thinking to myself, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Wow.
Right. So I ended up kind of jumping into the Airbnb business, but
Tell
told
us about
myself,
that.
yeah, yeah. So I also, in the back of my mind, I said to myself, when I figure it all out, I'm coming back to Colombia, because when I figure it out, I'm coming back to Colombia because it is just like heaven on earth. I don't know how to explain it. And I'm not trying to like, it's not even the fact that I have like Hispanic roots, and I'm a Salvadorian, that just loves Colombia. There's a lot of expats out there. There's people that don't even speak any like a word of Spanish that are out there and just loving it because it's beautiful all around. It's great. There's great people. And what I've noticed is everybody's there by choice. Like all of these remote workers there's nobody that's like, oh, like I grew up here. This is all I know. I wish there was something better. It's like everybody that was there is like by choice. So it has that energy to it. And I told myself, when I can earn in USD, I'm coming back out there. um, so the Airbnb business was interesting because I was, another thing I think that a lot of us entrepreneurs is at times maybe a little bit like stubborn, or almost like overly confident or delusional that what we would do we'll make it. We will make it regardless of the obstacles and
You kind of
adversity.
have to, though.
Yeah.
As an
Yeah,
entrepreneur, you have to have that just bullish fight on yourself of like, we're going to make this happen. There's no plan B here.
exactly. The grit is what a lot of psychological studies and this and that is one of the biggest indicators of success is the word grit. It's like passion as well as consistency. It's determination. It's a lot of different things. Um, but I had a lot of that, and I was like burning through the little bit of savings I had, and I was like, I'm not going to use my degree. I'm not going to use my degree. I had basically like a psychology degree and almost a minor in engineering. And I'm like, I'm not going to use my degree. I'm not going to go work at a restaurant. I'm not going to get another job. And for 6 months, basically, at my brother's house on this couch, I'm like looking through business models. I'm listening to like how I built how I made my first million podcast, how I built this podcast. And there was this finally there's this at the end of this podcast, this little segment that was talking about our Airbnb arbitrage. And this guy, and he was just like, yeah, I can, I rented this place, and I'm making double the amount after I rented it, and I don't have to put a lot of money into purchasing a home. I can just put down. So I'm like, I can rent a home and make double the rent I just have to be able to rent the home. That's not that much money. How do I get this money? I, I had basically the only source of money that I could muster up was $10,000, or just the money that I had in a Harley Davidson motorcycle. I had I had been, savvy since I was young in terms of flipping things, everything that you can think of, bikes, this, that, and then I would flip basically almost like motorcycles. And I had a really nice one, and I said, okay, I can get money from this. I flipped it. I just made a quick 10 grand from it. And I used that as seed money to start the business. And I I saw West Palm was a pretty prime location, especially in that time. It was like there was not a lot of competitors as well. It wasn't,
What year was this?
2019. It
Okay.
was it was like a golden year. It was a golden year.
Pre-COVID. I mean, so many things going for you there.
Yeah, it was pretty great. So I went to a homeowner, this guy James, and I was like, "Hey, buddy, like I got this model. I think this work. I think this can work." Um, and I had already gone through two other like landlords that were just like, absolutely not. And then this guy was pretty cool. He was younger. He was just, and I was just like, "Your home has a guest home. I could do it on both homes. This and that." And he was just like, "All right, but I'm going to charge you an extra $500 for the security deposit." I'm like, "Okay, all right, let's do it." So it was 3,000. The home was 3,000 in rent. So it was first month's, last month's, and basically security deposit. So ate up the entire 10 grand. And I'm just like, "Oh damn!" And I'm like, that was like, you know,
Was it
base.
furnished?
It wasn't furnished. So next step, next step is I go to my dad. I'm like, "Hey, I kind of need to furnish this home to be able to make this successful." And I was like, "Can I have 20 grand?" He was just like, "Absolutely not." But he's like, "But I can do you one even better. Here's a credit card, because my credit was shot." And he said, "Here's one of my credit cards. Just treat it like your own. Do not miss a payment. Um, do not miss a payment. You can use, what you need on the card." And I said, "Just sold." So I took the card, basically furnished this place through Amazon, this, etc., and literally running around Florida for this coffee table, for this couch, for this whatever. Just sheer
Marketplace, like just
market.
getting scrappy.
Yeah, just sheer will of just putting this place together. And I put it together, and it was not a in hindsight, not a great interior design, but back then I thought it was,
This place is
just
awesome. This
the
is
cat's
ballin'.
meow.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, this is great. So we had like a nice little camera too, professional camera. I took the photos, I did everything, and I set it up over the course of like 3 weeks or so, and then I basically am down to like the last week before I got to pay rent again. Put this thing online, and I am just pacing I am literally working it through from this Airbnb, like sleeping there almost. And I put it online, and I'm like pacing the room for like 30 minutes, and I'm like, "Will this work? Will this work?" And boom, a freaking booking comes in for like 8 grand, just for the guest home for a month and a half, basically. um
That's what I'm talking about.
and I was just like, "Oh." I was just freaking out, and
Did you cry? I would have cried.
I cried. I cried. I cried. I remember like falling to my knees and just like thanking God. I was
Yes.
just thanking God. I just didn't know how to express it. And I thanked God, and I was just like, "I got a tiger by the tail here. I know I do." So I basically, um, yeah, and I could sell the main house too. So that single month, just on the main house, I remember like making, I mean, I wasn't even, it was hard doing my like numbers and this and that, but I remember making like just about like 10 grand in profit, which was crazy to me.
Paying down that credit card.
Yeah, it was it was crazy. So I started, paying where I could, this and that, and I just realized, okay, there's a lot of profitability in this. So it's almost like the next freaking 2 years were almost like a blur to me because I just put my head down and all I would do is just wake up 6 a.m., go to the gym, and then work on the business. I was originally from Miami, but after Colombia, instead of going back to Miami, I ended up moving in with my brother in West Palm. And I had no friends there. I had no friends. I had no social circle. No other entrepreneur. Nothing. I was just there, and I said, I'm just gonna just change my position. And for a year and a half, I basically scaled to about like 10 homes, 10+ homes, um, and it was just sheer will of just talking to owners, bringing in money, and like being okay with accruing interest on debt and just saying, I'm not going to pay off debt yet. I'm just going to put into more homes, more homes, more homes. So it was pretty wild, and I just kind of scaled it up, and then it got to the point where like each of the homes in that era were just making like 7K plus, like 7K profit or around there, and it was more money than I had ever made, kind of thing. Um,
How did you handle that?
you know, I I handled it as best as I could have for the level of maturity and understanding that I could for
Mhm.
that age. In hindsight, I'm like, man, I should have purchased, or man, I should have reinvested this. I should have put this in Bitcoin. I
Yeah,
should have,
back then, Bitcoin, we'd be
yeah,
having a whole different conversation.
we'd be having a very different conversation. Um, but instead, I had been making more money than I knew what to do with, and I kind of, after a year and a half, almost 2 years, I took a big break for like a year.
Yeah.
And I traveled. I like traveled to Mexico. I like fell in love. I like would just kite surf for like at this kite surfing camp with some of my closest friends. I would invest in Bitcoin where I can, but I basically, after a year and a half, I called up my uncle that was in El Salvador, and I brought him over to West Palm Beach to basically watch over all of these properties. And once I did that, I kind of, um, once you put like a physical person in place, a handyman, a cleaner, or whatever, a
Mhm.
confidant that can just really watch over these places, you're good. I mean, you can, so long as you have the right tech, you can kind of skate out. So I skated out, and I said, I'm burnt out after like 2 years, and I'm gonna go like, spend this money. So
Yeah.
I kind of did that. And I would say that it took a year for me to like realize that, um, material wealth isn't all fulfilling. Um, and there is much more work that needs to be done. And I had to ride up into this like hedonistic cloud, and I had to ride up in this hedonistic cloud and just fall, to really realize what's truly important. So I did
Mm.
reinvest a lot of these things. These 0% cards I ended up getting, like, came to the end. I still was carrying debt on these. I like didn't reinvest a ton. Didn't I just wasn't doing things in the best way, I would say. And
You
then
were young. I
I was
mean,
yeah,
how old were you at this point?
yeah, like, I started, let me see. So that was probably still, I was pretty recent, almost feels, I was like 24, 25. Yeah. But I just, yeah, like 24. Um, so I what happened was me realizing that business is cyclical.
Yeah.
Things don't always, there are ebbs and flows to this, and I was just thinking it goes up forever. um, and the market started to saturate a little bit more. It wasn't as profitable as it was before because 7K per property was kind of nuts. Thinking back, 7K
Wild.
plus. Like there was, I remember a home of mine that was 5,000 in rent pulled in the high season months close to 28 grand. Like,
Yeah, exactly. That is astronomical numbers.
what the?
Yeah, I mean, most people would say, "Is that even real?" And I mean, you have the receipts to prove it, but it, my my thing to the young statement was that is straight up the just the lack of life experience of youth to think things are just going to go up like that. And you would never say that now. I mean, but you've lived a cycle to be able to say, hey, these are the things that are going to be fulfilling in the long term. What goes up must come down at least to a certain extent. Real estate, especially when you buy, you can build that equity and that appreciation, but you were arbitraging all these properties, right?
Mhm.
So for those of you who are kind of new to short-term rental technology or terminology, arbitrage is when you have a long-term lease with the agreement that you can sublease it out. And it is a phenomenal way to build a business and scale extremely quickly, as Seb has demonstrated here over 10 properties that, I mean, what is the profit on that? Like 23 grand
Mhm.
a month in that high season with those properties? I mean, that's insane for
Yeah,
not carrying the debt, very little risk. I mean,
yeah,
it's wild. Okay.
yeah.
So
And
back
that was,
back to the story.
and also that was one property on
Right. And you had 10.
one property made 23 grand in net profit. Like
Golly.
it was crazy to me. It was like, I don't know. It was
I
a whole
still
other
have
thing.
some arbitrage units now that, my all-in cost is 2K
Mhm.
a month. And then in my high season, I went for 2,200 a night with a 2 night minimum for football season.
Mhm.
And so I'll clear 8 to 9K in that property if I have a good month, and I'll cover my entire year's expenses. And then we stay occupied like 60 to 80% out of the rest of the year. I mean, still seeing really solid numbers, but it's not 23 grand on one property. That's for
Yeah.
dang sure.
Yeah. And I will say that's not necessarily happening now. But
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 it did happen
but it did happen,
during this
right?
time. Okay.
And it made me realize, like, if it can happen once, it can happen again. So I just
Mm.
like I it made me have to, once it stopped coming in the way that it was a little bit, which it is profitable. It is wildly, profitable, and this is a lucrative business, and I recommend it to everybody to jump in. But well, not everybody, because then it might not be right. But anyways, um,
Select few. Select
yes,
few people.
yeah. Um, but it just made me. It put me, like, it shifted me out of this like infinite abundance mode and realized, okay, there are ebbs and flows to this, and now I have to reconsider everything. Okay, am I doing this in the best way? Am I doing my accounting the best way? Am I structuring this, so that the team players that are operating this are not pulling their hair out, and I'm like able to run this in a really streamlined, good way? How can I reinvest? How can I pick up? How can I like just do everything better? So I think that was like what, like, to me. I think I've always matured and grown very quickly through
Hmm.
just when things are not so good, when things are not as, and I will say, when a good time for growth is when you like either get a really good deal and you double in size, and you have to learn all of the operations. You got to, you have to be able to like, spin all the plates. But there is a big, there's a lot of lessons to be learned through failure. Um, and I, I had to learn a lot. I had to learn a lot to really put me in the position where I learned the business really well. Because if things just go good all the time, you don't, there's not this pressure to like, why would I crack down on the little $10 a month subscription? This, or why is this, like all of these little things that really add up. Um,
I could not
so
agree more. Like
yeah.
when your back's up against the wall and you have to trim the fat and get lean, like you do more in that time than you do when things are going great because you
Yeah.
kind of coast in it a little bit.
Yeah. Hugely. So, there was a lot of different like L's I took, different losses I took, that really put me in the position to, reevaluate where I'm at, try to see how I could be more effective. How can I optimize this better? How can this mistake not happen again? There was a time when I literally had this homeowner that I picked up two of his houses, and I I started realizing this is going well. I'm going to invest a lot into these homes. It was two homes. I invested like 30 grand in just in furniture into both of these homes. And I signed it basically on a handshake with this guy, each of them a year lease. And he is like this Southern guy. He's like, oh yeah, I've been renting all my homes for 20 plus years. I foresee us having a long, fruitful relationship, and you can keep renting it every year, etc. And I kind of went off that, and like 6 months or 8 months in, he's just like, hey buddy, the housing market's pretty crazy right now, and this home is now worth like over 1 million. I gotta sell these. So
Oh,
it's like I
no.
realized, okay, I can't be signing 1 year leases. I just got the carpet pulled under me, after I invested a lot into these homes. Um, and I was, yeah, and he was just like, "Oh, you can buy them yourself. You want it for like, at the top of the market, 1 point something, million." I was just like, dang it, I'm good. So I had to just walk out of those homes. I put all of these things in storage. I had to find, other Airbnbs to like,
I
you
remember
know,
this.
etc. So yeah, it's interesting. Now I like walk around some of the homes every once in a while when I'm doing quality control, and I like see the old property, that those two properties, and all of its furniture is like scattered through all of the homes. Because I tried to like, yeah, build it and make use of the furniture, right? But you have to be like scrappy, definitely, when your back's against the wall, and there's that's huge. I think it's necessary.
How else have you pivoted your business in years since those, you know, the glory days essentially of, 23K in net profit on one property? It's not doing that now, but you're obviously still successful. What's the size of your portfolio now? What is the breakdown of arbitrage and co-hosting and own, if you have any? And like, what are you seeing work today when
Mhm.
you're scaling with co-hosting and arbitrage?
Okay, pivot my portfolio, and
Lot of you, I'm sorry.
yeah. So I will say that in terms of just like a pivot point was realizing that I can't do it all alone.
Yeah.
Um, I think that is, I don't know, maybe some people don't have this problem, but I definitely had, I felt like I could do everything. And also like, I will say that entrepreneurship kind of did that to me. Like it turns you into a beast. I from the beginning I had to learn, how to be handy around a house, how to put together furniture, how to bring it online. So I'm having to be tech savvy, how to learn the technology to bring this online and operate it and automated messages. And then I had to do the customer service and be, talking to these guests. I had to build the teams, the cleaning team, and then I had to do the accounting. And then it's just like you have to wear so many hats that it forces you to grow into a just superior version of yourself. And I believe entrepreneurship is the highest form of self-development. So it turned me into a very like capable and resourceful person that I felt like I could do anything, and I took everything on. And it got to a certain point where I pivoted and realized I can't maybe like I'm stretched a little too thin. So I um I was actually connected to my now business partner Erica through my dad. My dad is one of my biggest role models, and he's like a super connector, as you know, those type of people that are just know everybody around the world, and he just puts people together. And he put me together with Erica, and I immediately realized you are like everything I am not. and and I love it. I love it. So I basically told her, join me, and we'll run this thing up. And you are like, I'm like that crazy class clown visionary, and you are like that girl in the classroom that had highlights and little tabs on the pieces
Yes.
in the books. You know what
All
I
the
mean?
different colors.
Colors.
Yes.
And
Different pen for different sections of the notes. I was not that person either. So I'm with you, Seb. I'm
Exactly. So I said, I need that in my life. so she kind of came in, and she was just like, holy crap, it's a miracle you've gotten as far as you have.
thanks.
And I
The
was like,
backhanded compliment of
yeah,
that.
yeah. She was just like, you're like manually sending out these like hours for all of these cleaners. You're like putting things on notepads. It was just while I was scaling, I was just like flying on the seat of my pants, and I was just like bigger, 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 bigger.
Yeah.
And I think that's needed to a certain degree, but you know, I now have kind of, I don't want to say tamed it down a little bit or toned it. I just realized that in order to really grow a big business, you have to learn more parts to the business. You can't just, fully, I don't know, or find partners to supplement them with, right?
Who not how.
Yeah, who knows?
Who not how.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. So I I found the instead of figuring out how to do it, I found the who that could come in and be able to do it. And I had another mentor of mine tell me that the only time you ever bring on a business partner was if they have capital you don't, they have skills you don't, or they have time you don't have. Right. So those are the only three reasons. And it was kind of like, you know, all of the reasons. One minus the capital aside. So she just kind of came on, helped restructure the business, put in like SOPs, maybe like just really streamline a lot of this stuff, which reduced a lot of stress, I guess, on me, and it made me realize that wow, businesses are powerful. One, they can bring in a lot, and two, they can be run in a certain way that doesn't the business is not running you, you're running the business, right?
Totally.
So that was kind of like the pivot point. I brought her on, and yeah, that's been a very big lesson that you've kind of even drilled into me a bit. Who not how. So I am so happy that I have like a good team around me that is supportive and has all of the opposite strengths that I have. And just a little like bonus mini hack too. Um, I I got into like the whole I love psychology, and I graduated in psychology, but I started reading books on the Myers-Briggs indicator,
Hmm.
and I am like the textbook definition of an ENFP. We're like crazy, optimistic, you know, we are visionaries to a certain degree, and we approach life with enthusiasm, but sometimes we're not so detail oriented, like right. So I realized, okay, there's a way to structure businesses even based on Myers-Briggs personality traits. So
Mm.
I I kind of built my team a little bit with that.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's maybe like discrimination or something, or my
I don't
personality.
think so. I think
Yeah.
it's about finding the right fit.
Mm,
I don't use Myers-Briggs, but I use some other things as well to kind of see where people will best fit in a role.
yeah. My other great indicator that I at least I use in terms of like hiring is from Traction, which is an incredible book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
EOS.
yeah, the EOS system, and it's
Mhm.
GWC. It's either it's does the person that you're interviewing or wanting to bring on, do they get it? Do they understand the mission? Do they want it? Do they genuinely have that interest in, best interest and proper motivation
Mhm.
that aligns with you? And do they have the capacity to do it? Do they have the ability to carry out the technical skills, right? So, um, but yeah, kind of yeah, so hiring out and deciding not to do it all myself, bringing on a business partner. These were all turning points, I would say. And then kind of coming back full circle in terms of my portfolio. I One of the first homes was actually a family home of mine in here in West Palm Beach, and it's a owned home, and it has a guest home and a main home. So, I mean, if we want to consider it like two different listings or this and that, it technically is one purchased home, which is a family home, and then basically like 18 of them are arbitraged, and then the rest are property managed. And
How
now
many is that at this point?
now I'm at 28, uh,
Woot.
28, and we're actually tacking on another 7 right now.
You're me in
And
the
then
30s.
yeah, so we're tacking on top of the 28, we're tacking on another 7, and then he has basically 4 that are being finalized and ready to be freshly put on Airbnb. The thing is, he had an it was an investor in the area. Had been on top of this guy for like 8 months, and I kept saying I can do better than what she's performing. I can do better. I can do better. I see her numbers. I etc. And he just it's a hard pill to swallow to do a whole switch of somebody who's already so integrated into the business.
Yeah.
But she didn't pay taxes on all of these homes to the city, which is for like a year and a half, basically. She just stopped paying it. And on all of these homes, so he came out of pocket like 150 grand, or over 100 grand in just fines and this and that. And he was just like, and she was also kind of hard to deal with and didn't really know what she was doing all too much. And, he came to me and he said, "Hey, look, just can you meet?" And I was in Colombia and I'm like, I'm never coming back. But I was like, I'm back.
I'm back, baby.
I'm back.
Give me 24 hours. I'll meet you in West Palm.
Literally. So we both flew on a plane. 24 hours later, we both flew into town because he's also based out of like, I think, New Jersey. And we just got together and we just kind of finalized the agreement and contract and terms and everything. And I also flew Erica in because she's now remote as well. She's working from Puerto Rico and managing everything remotely. Um, and now she's going through the 7 active homes that were already Airbnb'd and being run. And then we're setting up the last 4 that are just, freshly, you know, ready, almost ready, you know. So,
So there are a couple of things in that example that I want to pull out for people. One is the fact that this deal was 8 to 9 months in the making with this guy, because we get coaching clients all the time who start the program and they want their first property like yesterday. And I totally get it. But sometimes the best deals take time, and it's better to wait for the right property at the right time than get into a bad deal like, oh, I just have to take first month's, last month's security deposit, pay all 3, and I have a 1-year lease that, may or may not be a good arbitrage deal and get the rug pulled out from under you. That, and, like, the dedication to make the deal happen. Like, you could have said, "No, I'm out of the country," or whatever else, and you're like, "No, I've been working on this for I don't know how long. I'm gonna make this happen and see it across the finish line." Talk to me a little bit about your, like, mindset work that you've had to, you said entrepreneurship is the greatest form of self development. Through this entire journey, you've had started with some really lows and some really high highs and, had a lot of in between there. How do you keep yourself motivated?
And since we're kind of touching on the mindset part of things, based on kind of what you just said, I the mindset aspect behind what you just mentioned in terms of pursuing a deal for that long, uh, I rule my life in terms of mindset frameworks. Like it's just how I work, quotes and mindset and just frameworks. And with being on top of an opportunity, I always think of the three P's that I learned also. It's being patient, persistent, and positive. So it just, if you follow those rules, you can get very far because, sometimes after like month 7, you're ready to be like, I'm giving up on this person, but if you're persistent and if you're still being like, hey, how's everything? Is there anything I can help with? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, how are the properties coming that you're putting the pools in on? I was asking how I can help him. How can, all of these different things. If you're, it's very easy to get sour, but patient, persistent, and positive, you eventually kind of get those results. But in terms of how I stay motivated, that is a very, that's a loaded question. I I would say I personally am just um I think a lot of people give the word obsession a bad word, like a negative connotation, but I think it's necessary. I think especially in a lot of like visionaries and founders and this and that, if you are obsessed with something, you're able to really bring it into reality that much faster than a lot of other people. If all you're thinking about is how to be successful in this, you become infinitely resourceful. You have that grit, you have that passion, you have energy that is just like bestowed upon you that you normally don't have. And I I am obsessed with improving the quality of my life and the lives of others. I I realized what keeps me motivated, I guess, is that I realized as I master self and understand like and get to a more mastered me, I just become happier and more capable of helping myself and helping the people around me. And when I started this, and before I kind of like years ago, like me 7 years ago, I am the complete opposite of myself. I am like negative, shy, introverted. I am, I was depressed. I was anxious. I was all of these things, which is a complete inverse of me now. And that's kind of a whole thing. And I was able to see like my higher self and a dream and this and that. But I realized as I started to work on myself, as I started to pursue entrepreneurship, which is also self development, life just got better. I went from being so like broken down mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, every avenue. I was like at bare nothing. Um, and as I started to master myself and master these different areas, I just saw how life like got better. And I feel like heaven is a place on earth cultivated in our own mind. Um, and if you curate your reality in a really good way, you can live heaven on earth rather than hell. And I was living hell. And as these years have gone by, I am like peeking more into heaven. And I'm just saying, wow, I want to keep going because it just keeps getting better as I master myself mentally, physically, spiritually, financially. And one, I want to keep just feeling better almost selfishly. But two, I also never want somebody to feel the way that I felt before. It hurt, and I don't like want somebody to feel that. And if I have learned specific tools in my life that work for me, I am it's my calling to be able to teach these tools to other people to turn their hell into heaven as well. Um,
Absolutely. Oh,
yeah,
so much good stuff there. I mean, it's why we do what we do.
yeah,
We have both been in places of like something's got to give, like absolute on the hamster wheel of life is miserable and figured out a way out of it. It's why we do what we do because we got tired of where we were, figured out a way out of it, and felt the calling to teach other people how to get off of whatever hamster wheel of life they find themselves on or themselves on. Grammar today. Wow.
mm,
Um, but I just love what you said. Like, you have the power to create heaven on earth for yourself and create the life you want to live. If you're stuck, you don't have to stay stuck. Like, that's your power. And it's frustrating for me to hear people say, like, oh, well, I have to do this or I have to do that. And it's like, but do you really? Like, what's keeping you from that?
mm.
How, how do you, because every day is not perfect. Every day is not heaven on earth. How do you keep yourself encouraged when you have low times, even now in your life?
That's a good one because the low times always come. Uh, and I would say the biggest thing is there's a lot of little life hacks and life coaching tips I can give to be able to kind of, um, frameworks that I could give. But I would say probably one of the biggest ones is just positive self talk. People, it's I I've I was actually telling this to somebody the other day. I was like, okay, who's the number one person that you talk to? And people are always saying, oh, my partner, my mom, my this. You are the number one person you talk to. You talk to yourself constantly more than anybody else. And if you were to play your loud thoughts on a speaker, would it be a great song? Would it be something that is not so great? If you were to talk to somebody else the way that you talk to yourself, because we're naturally programmed, and this world kind of instills different things into us, and we often beat ourselves up, and a lot of people do, and we're saying, stepping in front of the mirror, oh, I'm a little fat, I'm this, oh, I could be all of these things that we say to ourselves, we wouldn't really say to somebody else. Or somebody we care about. So learning how to curate your thoughts in a good way that kind of push you forward is really important. So I would just say, keeping yourself encouraged, making sure that your thoughts are just thoughts of plenty, of abundance, of not beating yourself up. And then that's the first, I feel, key. And then the second key is just stacking gratitude. And especially when you're in these like low points, it's hard to be, in a negative state when you're not, in gratitude. So you can do this through little wins. So I woke up early. I woke up early. I went to the gym. I ate that. I said what I would eat, and I ate that. I stayed away from this food. It's these little wins that you start to stack up until you have undeniable, you have undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. You say you want to be great. You say you want to do all of these things, but until you stack up this evidence and stack up these little wins, you're not going to have trust within yourself, to 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 be who you say you are. Because if you say you want to do all these things, but your actions aren't, showing that, you're not going to feel good. I mean, I'm going to go to the gym every single day, and you don't go. Well, you're not going to trust yourself enough, and not be happy with yourself. That's where confidence comes from. So you're keeping all of the promises that you hold yourself to. Um, and so just in those low moments, uh, yeah, positive self-talk, understanding, being, stacking up gratitude, and also realizing that don't sweat the small stuff because it's all small stuff. I mean, it's one of the quotes I use a lot on myself in my own mind. And we magnify the situation that we're in, not realizing that this is, if you go on your Google Maps, you can scroll out far enough where you no longer see the Earth. We are like a tiny little, freckle, and 100 years from now, this won't really matter, is what I'm trying to say. So live your life in a, you know, live your current life and solve your like current situation, and just be present, and don't over magnify these the little problems. They're just temporary conveniences. They're not greater than you are, and you're on a path. And if you believe in yourself and you have that trust in yourself, you will be in a great position. When I was in a not so good spot, I was always thinking to myself, it's okay. This won't matter because I'm going to be a millionaire in the future anyways. So,
Fake
this
it
is,
till you make it,
this is, yeah, this is just a temporary inconvenience. And that quote is interesting. I have heard people use "fake it till you feel it," and I think that's really powerful. Where
Oh,
you're,
I like that better.
yeah,
You
it's
win.
yeah, and it's like if you can really believe in your future self and where you're headed and have that marker of who you want to be, you know, and you feel that and you sit into that and you every day and you review like who you want to become. I think that's really powerful because it has a target. A lot of lack of motivation, and feeling like lost is actually not just having is not having a target. So
Mm.
reviewing your target every morning is really important of your goals and who you want to become in in the process.
And I would add to that your greater why behind that.
Mm,
And that's part of Seb came with us to Costa Rica last year, which was almost the entirety of the trip is taking a pause from your daily life and the busyness of it to sit back and evaluate who you are, why you do what you do, and set that path and that intention to become greater and live life as far as like your true purpose. And I couldn't have said it better. I completely agree with you of
mhm.
that is just such a key component to success that a lot of people miss out on. They think that they just have to make the money, do this. When I get to this part, I'll be happy. When I can leave my 9 to 5, I'll be happy. When I make this amount of money per month, I'll be happy. And as you shared, like you came up from this like hedonistic, you made all the money, more money than you ever thought you would have, and then realized there's so much more to life than that.
Yeah,
Um, I'm
that
excited for Costa Rica this year. Sub's coming back. What are you? I cut you off. What were you going to
yeah,
say?
I was just gonna say that 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 word why is so powerful. And I think the greatest people that I've ever met are also the people that are most self-aware. They understand why it is what they do, how they're doing it, and they are aware of what they're doing. They're like awake within it. So a lot of people want this financial freedom. They want, you know, the car, they want this, they want money. Why do I want money? Why do I want money? Is it because I maybe want like a validation from my peers, or maybe I want to, understanding the deep root of why you want everything that it is that you want is so powerful. And if you're able to enter some sort of like self-reflection process, whether it be meditation, journaling, or whatever it might be, you're able to connect what it is that you want to your why, right? So that's also incredibly like motivating. Yeah, if you're like, okay, well, my why is my family. Well, if my why is my family, you know, I'm able to persist more than when I'm just thinking about myself. My why will push me when I no longer have it in me to push myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're, yeah, being self-aware, like is very powerful. Very powerful. Yeah.
So the question that we ask everybody on here is, what's a time in your life that change has brought an unexpected opportunity?
That change has brought an unexpected opportunity. Um, I yeah, I guess I'll just I kind of touched on this for like a quick second, but it was very like maybe like an ethereal change. I don't know how to explain this. It was maybe slightly less. I don't know. I've been lucid dreaming since I was about like 12 years old. And
Explain to people what a lucid dream is in case they don't know.
yeah, so a lucid dream is when you're awake with inside of a dream. So you're able to be this conscious as we are when we are awake inside of a dream.
Does
So
that freak you out?
um maybe no,
Because that sounds freaky to me.
yeah, maybe in the beginning it freaked me out, but I've been doing it since I was 12, and now it's like a tool for also self-development and exploration and this and that.
I've got a question on this.
Mhm,
I will not derail you again.
mhm.
So I have had dreams where I was like, felt awake, but it's like, okay, wake up, move a finger. You know what I mean? Like, is that a lucid dream?
If you're conscious within your dream,
And then I can't, well, I'm not, it's
oh,
darkness.
oh, and you
I'm
can't move.
like, I can't move. Like, my body
Okay.
will not move.
Okay, so that is a precursor to a lucid dream. So that's what you call that's sleep paralysis.
Yeah,
So
that freaks me the heck out.
yeah, it is very scary. Honestly, that is a whole other
That's a
that
whole different thing. Okay.
that's a whole
As
other
long as
thing.
lucid dreaming is not that, I can get behind lucid dreaming as a form of self development.
Yeah, they say like sleep paralysis is the cross between, the dream state and the awake state because you're typically in your room, or in a dark place, and it's a lot of panic is instilled in this process when we're paralyzed, and every thought that you think about, it like manifests. So, oh, I can't move. I'm scared. I'm panicking. That manifests in you'll create a monster in the room because you're in fear and panic and stuff like that. But that's
Straight
a
up.
whole other thing. Yeah.
Lucid dream.
Yeah.
Sorry to
Lu-
derail this conversation. Continue, please, sir.
Yeah. So honestly, by anybody hearing me talk about lucid dreams or explaining it to you, you actually have a 40% increase ability to lucid dream tonight or in general, which is you're welcome. but so essentially lucid dreaming is when you're awake within your dream, and it's kind of like you're able to do anything that you want. I've turned into every single animal that you could possibly think of. I've walked on the surface of the sun. I've traveled to other like galaxies, and it's crazy because in the dream world you can manifest stuff and do whatever you want very quickly, and it's your world. But anyways, I always start my lucid dreams from a certain spot. I started it from this little valley. I started from this valley, and I just happened to be in this valley this one time after hundreds of times I've been there. There was this giant building. I walked into this building. I'm like, what is this building doing here? And it was, if you've ever seen like Bruce Almighty, it was all white. Everything was white. The elevators wasn't working, but it was all white. There's a reception, this and that. I decided to go up this flight of stairs, and I'm going from like the third floor onto the fourth floor, and the fourth floor door just like swings open, like almost enough to like knock me back. Um, and I was at a very low point in my life, and I just had this like dream, and I walked out. It was a version of myself that walked out, and he was holding on to like this shadowy figure of a woman, and he was just grinning at me and just smiling and was so radiant and was so powerful within his own skin, and I could feel what he felt, and it felt like heaven, if I could explain it, like bliss of happiness and this and that. And I asked him, who are you? And he was just like, oh, I'm you, without all your doubts, your insecurities, your fears. I am the version of you that could be if you were to work on yourself relentlessly, to become me. And I give you this feeling so that you can understand what it's like to feel powerful in your own skin, because until then I had never been. And I essentially, and he said also, by the way, at the end of your life, you'll also see me again, and you'll see where you fell short. So heads up. But anyways, I woke up
Oh, I just
and
got some chills there. That's ominous. Will you
yeah,
see this dude again? Is he in near?
yeah. So I think a very important part for all of us is the belief that we're capable of doing something. And it was the first time that I felt like the actual feeling of what it feels like to be at a higher like frequency state. Nowadays I kind of would like, you know, label it that way. But if it was the first time like I felt that, and within my own skin, and I realized it was possible. Like I could feel this way. I had the belief, and if you're able to believe that anything is kind of possible, you're able to create it. So I started picking up self development books. I started doing all of the things, working at it. I remember picking up a book called like the Happiness Advantage, or it's this yellow book on like changing your habits and everything. And there was the first chapter was talking about how this girl who was in a very undesirable situation. They had an MRI of her brain. They ended up finding her years later, and then she went from being depressed, in debt, in an abusive relationship, this and this and this, all of these things stacked up against her, to being like not in debt, the owner of a bank, of this like the manager of this bank, not a smoker anymore, this and that. And they saw that her brain had literally changed physiologically. Um, and which showed me that you can become any person that you want to become, so long as you can see it in your mind. Your brain and your physiological, your brain will physiologically change to adapt to the version of you that you want to be. And they in the MRI showed her brain literally physically changed. So that tied with, I felt the feeling. I know there's brain plasticity, and we can become anything we want to become. I just nailed in my head the person that I wanted to become, and I will work on myself relentlessly until I become that. And that was probably one of the bigger changing points in my life. That just on a dime, I still remember how he felt, and I'm still trying to get there.
And you're still reaping the benefits of that opportunity, because
Mm,
life is a constant opportunity.
mm, yes.
So with that, um, as I mentioned in the intro, guys, Seb is one of the coaches in our program, and you can obviously see why. But where can other people find you?
Sure. I guess my main driver is Instagram.
Okay.
I am in the process of jumping online and building the personal brand, but you can find me at Seb X Talk on Instagram. SEB. It's kind of like a TEDx talk, if you can think of it that way, but Seb X Talk.
Thank you for
And
explaining that, because I was like, is it trying to say sex talk or sex?
that's actually also a little trick too. It's like a hook.
It's a
People,
hook.
it's a
Yeah.
hook. People are like, oh, they like double think it, and
Well,
then
I'm
they
glad
click
you clarified that for me. I'm like, I'm not sure what he's trying to do, but Seb X talk. I thought that it was probably that, but I
yeah,
wasn't sure.
yeah. So it's a double. It's some different meanings, but I also just love to talk, clearly. So I'm sharing all of my lessons on life, business, Airbnb, and just really treating the page like the most authentic version of me and art. I feel like we get so consumed often nowadays in trying to make money, this, and this, that we don't have a creative outlet that we can really pour our creativity into. And I just see it, and I'm treating it, or actively trying to treat it as art, and not as something that's, purely business or whatever it might be.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your knowledge and insight. For those of you who are going to be in Athens at our mini retreat, Seb will be there. He'll be on a panel with us, and he'll also be in Costa Rica again for our Accelerate Your STR retreat. And I always look forward to getting to spend more time with him in person. So thank you, Seb.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.